Before we get started, here's a quick message from our sponsor. Would you like to save the world over your morning coffee? How do you feel about ending child hunger with your daily cup of joe? Let me introduce you to Free Lunch Coffee. They're on a mission to end hunger from the lives of young children. When you buy one bag of Free Lunch Coffee, you're providing 10 meals to children in need. And Free Lunch Coffee gives away 50% of the money they make to end the hunger in the lives of young children. How cool is that? They also have some amazing custom-made mugs and tumblers. Each mug provides 10 meals, and each tumbler provides 20 meals to the children in need. Beyond a fantastic cause, Free Lunch Coffee has a great coffee that is specialty grade, certified organic, and fair trade. They offer 100% money-back guarantee for 30 days. If you don't absolutely love their coffee, they will give you a full refund, and you can keep the coffee too. You have nothing to lose. Free Lunch Coffee is offering a 10% discount to the loyal listeners of this podcast. Use coupon code ASHISH, that's ASHISH, at checkout. Check it out at freelunchcoffee.com. Yes. Welcome to another great episode of the Ashish and Friends podcast. As always, I'm your host, Ashish. And of course, I've got my friend here. We got Ryan in the house today. We're going to do a YouTube video regarding the Dallas Mavericks. Our last YouTube video did some good numbers. This is very interesting. It was a very fun conversation. So the season's just about kickoff. We're very excited for it. So today we're going to be talking about what we learned during the preseason, what we think the rotations are going to be, and what our expectations are for the team for the season. So Ryan, they had three preseason games: two against the Bucks, one against the Timberwolves. They went 2-1. What stood out to you most during the preseason?
The one thing that stood out to me the most, if I'm choosing one thing, is Josh Richardson came to play. Josh Richardson looked really good in terms of, not just in terms of his offense, but in terms of this all around. He was offensively good. Seemed like he fit in seamlessly with the offense, and it seemed like he contributed defensively. So that was a very nice thing to see.
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, right? This is something we talked about in the last episode we did. I'll link it below when we did the recap of free agency and the draft. But knowing Josh Richardson, he's definitely a really good perimeter defender, right? So we're excited for that. But he's been, scoring, right? He's been, shooting threes. He's been, doing some playmaking and driving to the basket. And like I said, I think with this offense, with Luka handling the ball, he's going to get open quite a bit, right? Like when Luka drives in the paint, he's going to toss it out. Josh Richardson's going to be wide open. He's going to get that shot in. They always, like to throw the ball around, the perimeter, right? So they'll have the quick passing there. I think that's why you saw Seth Curry's numbers skyrocket. THJ, Tim Hardaway Jr., his numbers went up at the 3-point because you get those wide open looks. That's something he didn't have with the 76ers. He kind of had with the Heat, so that's why his Heat numbers were better at the 3-point percentage. But I think this is something to look forward to this season. I'm very excited for it.
And alongside with that, two other things I noticed. The second thing I noticed is I like the continuation of DFS's play, Dorian Finney-Smith. I think he progressed a lot last season to where you could put him as a nice 3-and-D player. And it looked like it continued both as a defensive and on his offense as well. He's able to rebound, score, and also play solid defense. And I liked how that just continued on into this season.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think with DFS, I mean, I don't think he'll get too much better, right, than what he was. But like, over the past few years, he's incrementally gotten better. I think he'll at least be the same he was as last year, which is like a good perimeter defender and a good 3-point shooter, right? He can do some things. He's not going to be the 1 or 2 on the team, but he's a solid, 3-4 option. I think he knows his role. He plays it well, and I think even if he gets incrementally better, that's fantastic for the whole team. And like I said, pairing him up with Josh Richardson, you have two really good perimeter defenders, and I think that's something this team has just missed for so many years, right? We looked for paint defenders that we've been missing. Perimeter defense is something we've lacked on, and just in one offseason, we have like so many more wings that can actually defend the perimeter, and I think that's really going to help the team.
Yeah, I agree. Even though I still have questions in that department, I do agree with that we do have in our starting lineup, Josh Richardson and DFS should be there as the perimeter defenders. the main defenders. I think the other question in terms of defending is the defense against the defense against the big men. And one thing I noticed, and it breaks my heart to say this, but as much as I love Dwight Powell, he's struggling defending big men. He's struggling defending Giannis, Brook Lopez, Cat. I mean, they were blowing by him, muscling him. It really wasn't a contest. And it breaks my heart to say that because he still has an offensive flair. I've seen him get the dunks, the layups, the around the paint. And he's also pretty good at the wing defending, switching, getting some good perimeter closeouts in that type of game. But what we need him in the big man defense is it struggles him and it's hard to watch. And that could just be a result of the Achilles injury, perhaps. I don't know. But that's definitely a department we need to answer some questions in.
Yeah, I think with Dwight, when you think about him, you're thinking about like a great pick and roll option, right? With Luca, you're really looking at a big that relies on his athleticism, and coming off an Achilles, that definitely sucks, right? And he's just a nice rim runner, does some nice things, but definitely wasn't great on the defense. I think that really we could shine a light on that in Game 3, right, against the Timberwolves. He was horrible, right? He's in the starting lineup, didn't do a great job. And I think that's something, like I said, is maybe it's just taking off the rust of not playing for so long, coming back. So let's see what he can do. I don't want to give up hope on him yet, but it's definitely not ideal situation, and I think that definitely affects what the rotations are going to look like to start the season and potentially what they could end up with. Real quickly, just some other things that really showed. I enjoyed the second game against the Bucks. I think that game you kind of got what it looks like the season's going to be, right? You got 29 minutes out of Luka and Josh Richardson. They put up really good numbers. They're both over 20 points each. Even Josh Richardson had 23, 7, and 2, right? Like you saw that. Then you put it in the bench. You got some young players doing great things, right? We saw Josh Green. We saw Tyrell Terry. I mean, they're okay. They definitely need improvement for sure. I liked seeing Tyler Bay out there on that game. I think he did well. And of course, Nate Hinton, right? The guard that can defend, he can he can shoot threes, right? But the fact that he can play really good defense is fantastic, and he grabs boards, which is awesome for a guard, right? Kind of like the Luka build. You're like a smaller guy, you don't expect to get that many rebounds, but he gets rebounds, he shoots threes, and he's a really good defender. So I think this is someone that can actually, might either start the season, they'll drop him down to the G League, but he's on the 2-week contract. I think he'll definitely be brought up throughout the season for sure. But I just really enjoyed seeing all these players, finally healthy. We got Brunson back. We got Powell back. Just seeing all these healthy bodies, these new bodies on the team is definitely exciting to watch during the preseason, and something that's going to go into the season. And I'm very excited about that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the rotations, right? Mm-hmm. So to start the season, KP is going to be out, right? He's not starting at least until January. We don't even know what that means, right? It could be the first game in January. It could be mid-Jan, right? I think they're going to slowly bring him back. They're not in a huge rush. They want him to be healthy for the main part of the season, which is the back half, the playoffs, however deep they go. So
there's no need to rush him. Just give time to the younger players, Dwight Powell, Maxi Kleber. Willie Cauley-Stein, I mean, he didn't even play in the bubble, so he's been off quite a bit. So I think it'd be valuable minutes for all them.
Yeah, exactly. This offseason was only 2 months, right? So like all these vets, especially like Luka, right, spent so many minutes. I think they're gonna limit his numbers a little bit, not to like 15 minutes or so, but like 25 minutes, I'd say 30 minutes. They're not expecting 35, 40 right now. So I think the vets are going to take a little slowly. We're going to see a lot of young players. Of course, Rick's going to tweak with the rotations for this. Every season, that's what he does. Like I know last season people were so upset. They're like I think it was like 9 games, 15 games. He just kept tweaking the starting lineup, and people were losing their mind. But like that's what he wants to see. He wants to see what the best lineup is, even for the backups, right? When you put up the backups, what's the best lineup for them too? And he's just going to play around with that, and I love that. Right? When we talk about in-game adjustments, last season before we started, Rick Carlisle was voted as a coach for the best in-game adjustments, right? I think this year went to Eric Spoelstra, but like last year, and I think Rick Carlisle ended up, somewhere in the top. But the fact that he's such an in-game adjuster, he does the best he can. I think that's fantastic. I love Rick. I can't stand the hate on Rick, so just want to throw that out there. Yeah. If you're a Rick hater, just respect him, right? Like he did amazing things with the Pacers, the Pistons. He won us a championship, and I think when you look at the talent, right, of what we've had the past decade or so and what he's done with them, he's always exceeded expectations. So I trust in Rick, believe in Rick, hashtag believe in Rick. But let's jump into the rotations, Ryan. What are your thoughts? Obviously, not with this is without KP. What do you think is going to be to start the season?
So I think for me, obviously Luka starter, Josh Richardson earned himself to start. I think DFS is going to be in that starting lineup as well. For the big, they're playing Phoenix Suns with Aiton. They're playing AD with the Lakers the first two games. Personally, I think I would feel more comfortable with Kleber in the starting lineup versus Powell, just to seeing what Powell's done the preseason and the fact he's coming off an Achilles. I think Kleber still has he can defend. He may not be the as great as offense player as Powell, but he doesn't need to be in that lineup. But I think him or even Willie Cauley-Stein, whichever might be a better option, and bringing Powell off the bench, and then THJ. I can see Carlisle throwing in Burke or throwing in Brunson, depending on how he wants to mix and match the lineup. I mean, you are going up against CP3, so I mean, you probably put Luke on him if you don't put another guard like Brunson or Burks. I can see him tinkering in that. And I was just going to mention Carlisle was already tinkering with the lineups during the preseason games. He had a bunch of different like Johnson, Lee, like Burke. Like he was just throwing wild things out there, seeing how it would work. So he's
Yeah,
already been doing that. But I think for me, I think the starting lineup going into the first game probably would be Josh Richardson, Luca, THJ, DFS, and Kleber.
yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I mean, especially in the last preseason game, we saw Klebo was just amazing, right? He's shooting threes.
Mm-hmm.
He's playing really well. Powell, on the other hand, was not playing that well, right? I saw everyone on Twitter just like outraged, like, "Oh man, Kleba needs to be in the starting lineup, not Powell." And I could see that in the future definitely being something. I think to start at the season though, they're going to try to see what Powell can do. I think you have enough offensive power, and then so I think it will be Luca, Josh Richardson. Josh Richardson should be a starter. He can shoot.
Mm-hmm.
He plays a good D. He kind of he makes up for the I guess lack of defense that Luca brings, right? And then you have TJ and Tim Hardaway Jr. I think Dorian Finney-Smith starts at the 4, someone that can run to the perimeter, play some good defense, can shoot threes, and then you probably put in Powell. I think down the road it goes to Willie Cauley-Stein. I think he's a better player. I think he's just more effective. But I think to start the season, Carlisle's more comfortable with starting Powell. And I think keeping Kleba on the bench is probably a really good option because when you go look at the bench options, you're probably starting Brunson, you're starting Burke. I think that's like formidable backcourt. That's really good bench options right there. Uh, I'm amazed that Brunson's still like potentially a backup on our team, right? He's a floor general. He's proven it. He's a good player, so I
Oh
love
yeah.
having him on the bench. Brunson, we saw Burke. Burke's been doing great in preseason. During the bubble, he was fantastic. And then you probably look at James Johnson, right? Obviously, you can play at the 4. Probably, I think Josh Green could get those minutes at the 3, and you finish out with Kleba coming off the bench. And I think as time progresses, Carlisle gets more time with Willie Cauley-Stein. Then he'll get to that role, and he'll come up as the bench option. But I think to start the season, they're probably going to use Powell, who can still do the pick and pop, the pick and roll with Luca really well, and then go from there.
I think, and I want to be clear. I think Powell should get minutes, but I think it should come in a different way. It just to me like when KP comes back, it doesn't make sense having a Powell with the KP in the front court because they're both kind of like similar in terms of the defensive matchups. So if you're guarding, let's say Steven Adams Zion, it just doesn't make sense to have them both. Like it makes sense to have Willie Cauley-Stein next to KP, in my opinion, however you put it. I mean, unless you're trying to spread KP to the 5 and then do a small ball lineup, then you go small ball. But
Let's get into that, right? So
yeah,
when you think about KP coming back, mid Jan, whatever it is, what do you see that lineup being, right? Like you said, it kind of depends on Rick, kind of depends on the team we're playing, right? But
hmm
I think ideally you're looking at KP playing the 4 on offense, playing the 5 on defense, right? He's not someone that can run to the perimeter for a stretch
right.
4. He's someone that's going to be in the paint. He can block shots. He can get decent rebounds. I think he's perfectly fit at the 5, and I think that's where you're trying to look at. So you're trying to bring 1 through 4, and who's going to be that 4. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think he's better suited at the 4 and you're bringing a 5 with him, or do you probably enjoy seeing him at the 5 and having a 4 with him?
I think defensively he's more suited at the 5. Offensively, obviously, 4 or 5 doesn't matter. So I see him. I see it best fit him as as the stretch 5, and then having a small ball like having we have DFS at the 4. I'm not saying he's going to stop a LeBron or Kawhi but he can definitely slow down and guard those matchups. I've seen him do it, and then he can throw in Kleba at the 4. He's done that too. So I think going that route makes sense and then you can throw James Johnson at the 4. So you have options to like rotate it. Dwight Powell fits at the 4. So I think in that regard, it makes sense keeping KP at the 5 because especially when you look at the nature of what the league is tending toward. It's tending towards small ball. There's not too many. Like the only team that comes to mind is Zion and Steven Adams kind of combination where you're like, okay, I need to put a real center out there. Or DeAndre Ayton, which is our first matchup, which I'm interested to see how the Dwight Powell will do against someone like an Ayton. So I think those are the ones you may consider putting Willie Cauley-Stein in the lineup and like maybe THJ off the bench. Because I just think DFS kind of needs to be in that starting lineup as that 3 and D, like the true. Josh Richardson is also like, but he's more of a playmaker D. And I think you need that 3 and D. So that's why I'm leaning toward stretch 5, and you can throw a THJ, you can throw in you can kind of mix and match that 4, and what you're playing against.
Right, for sure. So one thing I want to touch on real quick. I mean, one thing we talked about during free agency that I was just a little upset about is not getting that big bulky center to kind of defend and stop, at least slow down Aiton and Zubox from the Clippers. Right, he dominated us in the bubble, so like that's something to watch, see who can do that. Right, because I think you're gonna try KP, you're gonna try maybe Bobby and Willie Cauley Stein, see what they can do, but it's gonna be tough for sure. But I think when KP comes back, I'm seeing it that he's playing the 5, right? Obviously on defense he's more of a 5, so we're going off that. So I think the lineup will look like Luca, Josh Richardson. You probably start, even throw Hardaway Jr. out there and probably have DFS at the 4, right? I think that's something that suits him. He's a little undersized there, but I think playing the defense on the perimeter, he can shoot threes, he can stretch on offense, do a good job. I think you'd probably lack on rebounds, which could be an issue. So they might go a little bit bigger. So you could see, like you mentioned, putting a Willie Cauley-Stein next to him, maybe Kleba next to him. But I think in my mind, I see Luka, Josh, Hardaway Jr., Dorian Finney-Smith, and KP. And then on the bench side, you're still getting Brunson Burke. Like you mentioned, if Hardaway could come off the bench, I think that'd be fantastic. That'd be spectacular, really. But like, I think Brunson Burke, Green, you either put Johnson or Kleba, right? And then maybe, like I said, I think down the road that Willie Cauley-Stein's gonna really crack the rotation. I at least think he deserves a shot, and I think with KP out to start the season, that's the prime time to at least throw him out there, see what you have, see what he hasn't. He is signed to a 2-year deal, and I think he provides some value, and I just want to see him in action.
I definitely agree. And the one point I want to add is that I definitely think it makes sense for James Johnson to get some minutes at the 4. The 4 just because he is an undersized power forward, but I think his physicality and his strength will help Mavs in that 4, especially if you're going against like a LeBron type, a Marcus Morris type. Like I think, yeah, I mean, he's not going to defend them great, but he's definitely going to bring that physicality that I think will help defensively for them. And then also the second point I'm going to make is that I think depending on the lineups, I think you can switch Burke and THJ depending on how you feel. Just like if he's on an offensive slump, you want, like size wise, like you have like a CP3 and you're like, I don't know if I want THJ there. Like I just want him off. Like I think there's a lot of versatility just because of the players they have. And I do see Tyrell Terry. He was showing some nice flashes in the preseason games. I can see him later on in the season maybe making some type of impact too off the bench, as well as Josh Green. It's going to be interesting to see Rick, tinker with those pieces and throw them in there very slowly, kind of just sneaking them in there to see how they work. I think there's some promise. I hope one of them shows to be a nice draft pick.
I think they're all great draft picks, at least going in. I'm very excited for all of them. I think Terry needs work. I think it's going to take him some time. Like I said, maybe at the back end of the season, he has enough time.
He showed some flashes. He put some dimes I saw in the preseason game, and
right, yeah.
he looked like he had a lot of potential. Sounds
Yeah,
like it.
I think the potential's there for sure. I just think he needs to develop his body a little bit more, work on the shot a little bit. But I think he's going to be exciting to watch whenever he does come in and play. I'm looking forward to Josh Green. I think he gets the most minutes right off the bat. At least on the defensive end, he can stick up there. I think he needs to work on his threes and providing some offensive value as well, which I think down the road he can. But he can instantly at least be a nice 2-3 defender on the wings. And like I said, down the road, Tyler Bay, Nate Hinton, I think these are people that are going to be brought up from the G League and get some time and get some minutes. I think they're good rotational players. Wesley Iwundu, I think's pretty down on the bench. I think he's like if your wings are really exhausted, you throw him out there. He's more of a 3-and-D light option, right? He's developing there. He's had some years in the league, hasn't done like amazing, but he's just like an extra body, right? If you have tons of wings out there, he's someone that can go out there, or like I said, just a nice bench option, bench warmer, to be honest. But I think just to see his development, he is on a guaranteed 2-year contract. I think it's more of just like learn the plays, play your role, and let's see what happens like next year. And
Yeah, it sounds like a project to me. It sounds like a reclamation project. Let's see what we can make West window at the end of the day.
yeah, exactly. Like you're right. I think they found some traits they really enjoyed of his, and they're like, we can do something with this, but it's gonna take some time. Like I said, maybe at the end of the season, spare some minutes, injuries, whatever it is. But he's on the bench. Bobby, of course, on the bench. We love him. He's a great player. I mean, he had a sick dunk against the Timberwolves. There's like 3 defenders around him. He caught the ball and dunked it. It was a fantastic play. I loved it. But
He
I think
almost made the game-winning 3 too.
yeah, I wish it had gone in. Let's not forget, before we all had to quarantine and basketball season was on pause, he went out, right? Like against the Nuggets, he had a
Oh
fantastic
yeah.
game. He was killing it, right? And let's see, but like you bring in Goliath out there, I think he's going to destroy stuff. But he's a very situational player, like we've mentioned, right? When you're talking about bigs that can stretch the floor, he's not ideal to have Bobby out there. You're talking about a little bit slower, in old school in the paint bigs. I think he's perfect. He grabs rebounds, he dunks. He's fun to watch. So we all love him here.
I
And
think Rick has a lot of players that are on the bench that's like, well, I need a spark. I can throw this player in, maybe like Boban or Trey Burke or Brun. Like you have a lot of options. Of like maybe I'll throw them in, see if they can put a spark. But I do agree with you. I think Josh Green is going to end up getting some minutes at the end of the day because he's a other guy that's like a more true 3-and-D type of player, which could come in handy. That I think is the closest to being able to crack in the lineup a little bit.
yeah, no, for sure. And like I said, I think he'll definitely get minutes. I'd love that, like I said, that group of Brunson, Burke, Green, Johnson, and Kleba or Willie Cauley-Stein. I think that's fantastic. Like second, the bench starters out there. But let's see what happens. I think as time progresses, either you'll see Powell get better, be that, starting caliber ish, or at least the bench option, or he'll find his way to the bench with Terry and Iwundu. Because I think Kleba, Willie Cauley Stein, and all these other bigs kind of bring something else, and they've shown to be effective, at least right now, right? Like we said, he's coming off a major injury. He's a big that relies on athleticism. So I want to give him a shot. Let's see what he can do. But I mean, maybe it is what it is, and he's just kind of on the bench and just like the third big on your team, which is totally fine, right? That's actually ideal. Probably just not the ideal contract for him right now.
Yeah,
Um,
we love you, Dwight.
yeah, no, Dwight's a great person. I luckily got to meet him, but he's a fantastic dude. I wish him the best. Let's see what happens. I think, like I said, I think he actually really fits a nice role with this team. We just have to see him get his feet under him, right? Like let's not
I
like
definitely agree.
he's been out for months. Let's give him a break. Let's see what happens. So let's talk about some expectations here. Okay, let's talk about where you think they land up in the West. What seed do you think is like we've talked about? We've talked about past episodes. We can link them here. Just look at them. But the West is pretty stacked, right? There's going to be hard battles. Some teams at the top, a lot in the middle, and some of them are not going to make the playoffs. So where do you see their seed at? What seed do they land up on? And how far do you see them making it in the playoffs?
Give us some thought. So I think Lakers are the first seed, and I think there's a couple teams that just have the depth and the skill. So like the Clippers, you can't count out because obviously you got Kawhi and Paul George. You got the Nuggets. You got the Trailblazers that really improved, I thought, during the offseason. I mean, I put them as the fourth seed right now, just based on the fact that the Nuggets and the Clippers were both great last year and just practically and generally improved their teams. And So I have to put them I think at fourth, but I think I put them at fourth, but I think they have the potential to even be a third or a second, just depending on how KP comes back, when he comes back, how the other pieces they Mavs got during the off season. And having said that, I think they can get past the first and maybe even the second round, push it if Luka's like on fire and KP is KP we know and love. I think that team can really actually make a run for it, especially if contingent if you get the 3-and-D with Josh Green, like someone Tyler Bay, someone comes out and is like, all right, I'm ready to play. Like this is like I'm ready to, and then we got our center situation. Like Dwight Powell's fine, Kleber's good. Like we got a nice rotation, and KP's healthy. I think you can make a good run. I think there's a good run in them to the conference finals.
Yeah, I like what you're seeing here. So I mean, like you mentioned, I think Lakers, health is if it's there, they're gonna be the number one seed. And after that, I mean, I feel like the Mavs kind of fit in, right in with the Clippers and Nuggets. But also, there's those teams from the back. The Suns that got way better. The Blazers got way better. And I think you just have to see, right? They have enough depth on the other teams, and the Warriors are coming back. So I think it's gonna be a super tight race. The Jazz are always in consideration. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if they end up in the 5, 6, 7 seed. To be honest with you, 5, 6, because it's gonna be very close. I mean, it's a short season. There's only 72 games. KP's out to start the season for a couple of games. I mean, there's a lot of things moving here, but I think they end up as the 3 seed, if not the number 2 seed. I know it sounds super homerish, but if you look at it, the Nuggets got a little bit worse, right? They lost Jeremy Grant. They lost some of their depth, right? They had a nice draft, but I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think they got significantly better, right? Where they probably should have. I think the Clippers, another team, still star power, Paul George, Kawhi. Let's not act like they suck just because they sucked last year in the playoffs, but they're a talented team. But I think with the consistency, you still have the same head coach here, which you don't have with the Clippers. You still have the same players from last year, right? You look at the Clippers, they lost a couple of players. They lost Harrell, they lost Jamichael Green, right? So they lost a couple pieces here and there, and I think that's going to end up biting them a little bit. And I think with our team, when you look at Luka, he's an MVP candidate, right? I think he's still the favorite, or at least the second favorite right now to win. I think with an MVP candidate, you're talking about one of the top seeds. So I think I'll book it and say the 3rd seed just to be safe. I think the 2nd seed is not out of reach, and like I said, I wouldn't be surprised because it is a tight race, a shorter season that they end up in the 5th or 6th. But I think they'll be definitely fine. I think they definitely win the second round, and I think they make it to the 3rd round. And I think that wraps it up. I think this is a fun conversation to have. We'll keep doing this throughout the season. I think the season is going to be fantastic. Only 72 games, but right off the bat, Suns, Lakers, we get to play on Christmas Day. I think that's huge. That's something I always looked forward to. And the fact that we're playing the Lakers is going to be amazing. Devin and I will actually be doing a recap of the Christmas Day games. We're looking forward to that. But Ryan and I will keep talking about the Mavs. We're going to have that throughout the season. I think this is going to be an amazing season to watch. And just a quick shout out to Mal, who commented on our last YouTube video and asked us to do a video about the rotations. I think it's important. A lot of things, new players coming in and KP being in and out. So this is a fun conversation. So shout out to you. I appreciate the comment. Please like, subscribe to our videos. We're just a bunch of fans. Me and Ryan, we're just huge Mavs fans. We just enjoy the content, but I just want to provide some really good value to you. As a fan, what our standpoint is, as someone that really watches the games and looks at the stats, what I think is going to happen. And soon I do want to bring in some nice analytical numbers to actually provide that in-depth value to you guys. But I appreciate everyone listening. We're huge Mavs fans. Hit us up with questions and comments or whatever it is. But we'd love to talk about it. Whatever you guys want to talk about, we're down to talk about it. We love Mavs.
Hashtag Mavs fans for life.
Yeah, MFFL. That is fantastic. We love it. But thank you once again for tuning in. We really enjoyed doing this episode.